forum this evening. My name is Joseph Strauss, and I'm the Executive Director of the North Metro Mayors Association. And we thank you for all coming tonight, and particularly the candidates, Mr. Benjamin Kruse and Mr. John Hoffman have joined us tonight to share with those of you here in person and those who will see this forum on cable TV in the future, their points of view regarding the various questions that we have a chance to ask them. The North Metro Mayors Association was created in 1987 as a nonpartisan organization advocating for issues and opportunities of importance to the Twin Cities North suburban citizens and cities. Our goal in sponsoring tonight's legislative candidate forum is to provide citizens with an opportunity to learn about the candidates' ideas and position on issues that we believe are important to the future of our communities. We regret that we cannot cover all the issues of interest tonight due to time constraints as we focus city and state governance questions. We expect that there will be other forums where other issues will be addressed. We will pose 4 questions that were sent to the candidates earlier in a rotating order with set time limits on their answers. We would note that these limits are maximums and not minimums. We will also solicit questions from the audience. We will use as many of those questions as time permits. Please write your questions on a note card available and give to the Bob Banke in front here, who will give them to me during the forum. Questions will be addressed to each candidate, so please refrain from asking for a response from a specific candidate. So I'd give an opportunity now to our candidates. At the beginning, they flipped a coin to see who would go first, and Mr. Kruse won and decided that he would like to pass the opportunity to make an opening comment to Mr. Hoffman first. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Bob. And thank you to the North Metro Mayors Association for sponsoring this evening's forum. My name is John Hoffman, and I'm seeking to become your next state senator. I'm married with my wife, Yvette, and our daughter, Hope, who is a student at Champlain Park High School. Let's not forget our 2 rescue dogs that we're also raising as well. I work as the Marketing Director and Public Relations Director for Midway Training Services. Midway Training Services is a place where we help find people with disabilities employment opportunities. I'm proud to be also a jobs creator as the co-founder and owner of Consumer Credit of Minnesota, where I help people in financial trouble figure it out. Just like a lot of us, I'm working 3 jobs to make ends meet. I am not a career or professional politician. For the past 7 years, I've been a board member of the Hennepin School Board, the last 3 as its vice chair. This experience has prepared me to address nearly every type of situation and issue that I'll face as a state senator. I'm currently on the board of directors of the Midway Chamber, as well as local president of the Biz to Biz Network. I've served on numerous local, state, and federal advisory boards and commissions, primarily in the areas of education and health and human services. I love being on the school board. My greatest happiness comes from working with the students, families, and the teachers. They inspire me.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Kruse.
Well, thank you very much, Joseph, and thank you, Bob, and the North Metro Mayors Association for having us here this evening. It's always a pleasure to be before this group. A little bit about myself. I ran for office the first time 2 years ago. The reason for running for office was my background is small business, restaurants, real estate, and through those I was very involved with the Chamber of Commerce, very involved in obviously real estate and seeing what the real estate climate was like. And let me tell you what I saw. 2 years ago, I saw many of our small businesses closing their doors. And because many of our small businesses were closing their doors, I saw many of the residents in our area losing their jobs, losing their homes because they had lost their jobs. Time and time again, I had folks coming to me looking for short sales, help with foreclosure, and it got to a point where it just broke my heart so much. I said, I've never done anything like this before, but I have to give it a shot. And I threw my name in the hat, and sometimes be careful what you wish for, because I was graciously elected by the folks of our Senate district, and it's been an amazing experience. I have learned so much, and I'm so proud to represent this district. One of the reasons I'm so proud is that our district here, Senate District 36, I would argue is one of the most diverse Senate districts in the state of Minnesota. And I take pride in that. We have just about every nationality, every religion, every background, every economic status. And I take pride in that for this reason. Because when I get out there and I truly listen to what the folks in our district think, I know that the legislation I pass, because our district is so big and so diverse, has a great chance at benefiting the entire state of Minnesota. So it has been my pleasure to serve you, and I look forward to serving you for another 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Kruse. First question will go to Mr. Kruse. If elected, what will you do to ensure that the 2013 legislature works in a less adversarial way internally and with Governor Dayton and finds ways to resolve major policy differences?
Well, thank you, Joseph. That's a great question. Obviously, we had this past session government shutdown, and I take pride in the fact that I, even in that difficult environment, was able to chief author and pass 9 significant pieces of legislation by working bipartisanly across lines and with Governor Dayton, even though I'm a Republican and Governor Dayton is a Democrat, was able to get 9 laws signed in. And that's more than almost any other senator in the Minnesota State Senate. I think there's only a couple that actually got more, and they were committee chairs, so that helps a little bit. So I think I've already proven that I can do that. I think the way I did that was making sure that I communicated not just with the folks in my party, but also with the folks across the aisle, making sure that I was listening to every point of view and being movable in certain areas, understanding that if somebody brings new knowledge to me that I didn't have before, I should take that into consideration and keep an open mind about it.
Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. I have a proven record as a consensus maker on the biggest school board in the state of Minnesota. I will bring that experience and commitment to the Senate and will work with whomever is sent there by the people. You know, there is nothing wrong with taking positions that some think are adversarial, as long as you're committed to getting a result. Minnesota needs to get things done, but we also need to have the courage to have the conversation that includes every possible view and opinion. Just agreeing for the sake of pretending to get along doesn't work. The challenge for us is how to resolve legitimate differences. When I have the chance to represent my communities at the legislature, I will bring with me humility and context. Humility helps us identify and accept the best possible ways to solve a problem, no matter whose idea it is. In context, that helps us see the world as it truly is. As a board member, I look to understand problems confronting our district with the intent to understand their causes. My opponent has taken Tea Party stances and stubbornly hewed to a rigid party line, and even when it shut down our government, I will help the Senate focus on solutions that help all Minnesotans.
Okay, you have a chance to rebut if you prefer.
Thank you, Joseph. Well, I have to admit I don't know what Tea Party stances are, Mr. Hoffman, but I think that my record speaks for itself. I have been able to work across party lines. I passed 9 significant pieces of legislation, and that's not even counting the pieces of legislation that I authored and were rolled into what we call omnibus bills, which are the larger budget bills. Those aren't even included. You're probably looking at about another 5 or 6 that were included in that as well. So again, I would just let my record speak for itself, and I'll stand on that.
You know, sometimes when the partial truth is in front of you, it makes absolutely zero sense. And you know, you've been with the North Metro Tea Party for a while, Ben, and your approach and that of your colleagues, it was wrong. I mean, forcing a shutdown of our government and still taking a paycheck is awful. And now when I look at your campaign literature, you try to rewrite that agenda. And I want to know, why have you voted against creating jobs in Minnesota? Why you gave money to those creating jobs overseas? Where's your leadership in this, Ben? You speak about creating surpluses, but you know there is no surplus. As a school board, we didn't hide or run. Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. We'll move on to the second question, and this time Mr. Hoffman will answer first. If elected, which committees would you seek to serve on, why, and how do these committees mesh with your priorities for your district?
Thank you. K-12 in Minnesota faces a massive challenge, and there is a problem that will only get worse unless we act now. Kicking the can down the road with budgeting gimmicks like the school shift that Ben supported just isn't good enough. And I'm proud to say that the Hennepin School District achieved one of the lowest achievement gaps in the state, and we ran our district more efficiently. We have one of the best birth to 3-year-old programs in the state, and we're able to help families get a good start on their children's education. We expanded early childhood preschool programs as well as all-day kindergarten. We have a goal for all children. We worked with the teachers union to design and approve a performance plan without raising taxes. We balanced the budget in a time of flat state funding while adding teachers and opportunities for students, and we prioritized funding by classrooms by adding science and social studies teachers in the elementary schools. We even reduced the school district portion of property taxes during an economic crisis. I'm a person who runs a business, works with business leaders, and serves on a school board. I have the background and experience I believe can help the legislature do a better job in partnering with school districts, the community, and businesses.
Mr. Kruse.
Well, thank you, Joseph. I just wanted to make sure, this is the question about committees, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Well, I currently sit on 4 committees in the Minnesota State Senate. I'm very proud, and I worked very hard to sit on the Education Committee as well as the Conference Committee for that committee. I sit on the Commerce Committee, I sit on the Transportation Committee, and I also sit on the Local Government Committee. I'm proud to sit on all of these committees because they all have very deep effects on our district in particular. If you look at the Education Committee, we have the Anoka-Hennepin School District in our area, which is the largest school district in the state, as well as the Osseo School District, which is the 5th largest. Huge impact there. If you look at the Transportation Committee, we have some huge transportation needs. Look at 252, look at Highway 610, look at Highway 10. These are all reasons that somebody sitting in this chair should be represented on the Transportation Committee, and I will continue to work on that committee. And then also the Commerce Committee, as you know, my expertise is in small business, and so I think that's probably where I'm best put, looking to put Minnesotans back to work. We have done that, and I will continue to do that.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Hoffman, you can short rebut, please.
Sure, thank you. Real short. You know, when we faced closing our schools, we cut our pay by 10%. When you shut down our state, you took a paycheck, and I just still want to know where your leadership is in that. Then when you talk about the infrastructure piece too, I'm a little confused because in 2011 you weren't for the bonding bill that should have been passed in 2011, but yet you approved the small portion of it in 2012. You know, we school members didn't always agree, but we always found pathways for real solutions.
Mr. Kruse, rebut.
Thank you, Joseph. Well, just a couple of thoughts. Mr. Hoffman brought up the school shift. That is something that I am absolutely opposed to. This was a negotiation piece that was actually brought to the table by the governor, and Republicans in the House and the Senate fought very hard, which what was originally offered as a 50-50 shift got dialed back, less of a shift to a 60-40 shift. I think it's also important to remember that this shift was a $700 million shift, nowhere near a $2 billion shift. The remaining shift was from previous legislatures held by Democrats, who also shifted this money. That's a very, very important distinction to make. Of that $700 million that was shifted, with the current predictions of our surplus, that will be paid back by the end of this year. That 700, almost paid back by the end of this year. $350 million is already paid back.
Okay, the third question.
Can I respond to that?
Very quickly.
And, you know, I signed off on borrowing $42 million for the fiscal year 12 cash flow net cost of borrowing, and we ended up, that $180,000 was in interest that we borrowed on. So I don't know where you get $700 million when we know definitely the Department of Revenue is saying that we're going to have a $4.5 billion deficit June 30th, 2013.
Well, thank you, Joseph, for the opportunity. I think it's important to stick to the rules here, so I'm going to do my best to do that. But since we had that comment, I'm going to simply say that the decisions that were made at the school district, and in particular, that loan that Mr. Hoffman was talking about, we at the state level made sure to facilitate that. And especially if you take a look at some of the salaries, the administrative salaries, and some of the pay increases that even that school board was able to offer themselves during some of these difficult times, I think it's important to take that into consideration when we talk about $180,000 in interest paid on a bridge loan.
Okay, thank you. The third question, and Mr. Kruse, you'll have the opening opportunity to answer this. Will you actively support increased investments in essential public infrastructure, such as road and transit improvements that help businesses and create jobs? Mr. Kruse.
Thank you, Joseph. I absolutely will. I have in the past. This past year, I did vote for a reasonable bonding bill. The times that I did not vote for the bonding bill, there were many issues, many projects that were in there that were not time appropriate. We need to be fiscally responsible right now. When we had a bonding bill in front of us, just like this past year, a bonding bill that benefited specifically our higher education facilities, roads, bridges, things that we absolutely needed, I wholeheartedly voted for that bill. And voting for that bill also brought to this area a new biomedical science building to both Anoka Ramsey and North Hennepin community colleges. So I think that's important to remember. I will continue to do that again when it comes to projects like 610, 252, Highway 10. I will make sure that as we fund this infrastructure, we do it in a way that is going to best benefit our business community and our residents. I passed two pieces of legislation in this past session, one which created a pot of money that would specifically be given out to projects that had high economic development potential. Again, thinking outside the box, what I was able to do is author another piece of legislation that allowed corporate businesses to contribute to projects when they knew they had high economic value to complete those projects and then be reimbursed when it came up on the list of projects that we have at the Department of Transportation. We need more of this outside-the-box thinking.
Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. I will, and by using reasonable business sense, the Department of Transportation and the Department of Commerce has identified billions of dollars of necessary repairs and improvements. We must fix our roads, bridges, and transit systems. We also need to look at better ways to move people, traffic, and goods, especially in the metro area. I will insist upon well-established priorities for projects so that we spend smartly and effectively. The first step is to make sure we have spent all the money that's already in the system and that spending it effectively. I will also insist that work is paid for through proper bonding and by closing tax incentives to companies using funds to create jobs in foreign countries. We are giving well over $450 million a year to corporations that are creating jobs with the money overseas. You know, it's time to bring that money home to Minnesota, invest in our state, and create jobs right here at home. Imagine the immediate positive impact we're going to have on our local economy.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kruse, you have an opportunity to rebut first.
Thank you, Joseph. There's some things that Mr. Hoffman has said that I agree with, but I think it's important to remember as we look at these bonding projects or the spending on infrastructure, we are seeing one-time infusions of work. We need to do some of those things, but the reason we need those things isn't to put people to work for a temporary time span. We need to do those things so that we create an infrastructure in which our business community can better function. We need roads and bridges and affordable energy to make these things happen. I am looking at this from a long-term investment perspective.
Okay, you have the opportunity to rebut, sir.
Thank you, I will. You know, this is not a time for empty campaign talk. Bring specifics to the table on this. At a time of very low interest rates, it makes absolutely good business sense to go for the full bonding. You left 10,000 jobs on the table, and those jobs are folks that live in our communities that would have been sustainable, and we would have been jobs creators right here. And it all starts with bringing those low interest rates to the local economy as well as getting those jobs back here.
Okay, thank you. All right, our fourth question, and it's really a two-part question. If given the opportunity to ask just one question of your opponent, what would that question be? So we ask Mr. Hoffman to ask that question first. However, he also has to answer the question after Mr. Kruse does, and vice versa. Okay. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. Ben, you say everywhere in your campaign literature that jobs and infrastructure are your priority. Yet while you've been in the Senate, you've offered no specific plan other than cutting taxes for the very wealthy individuals and large corporations. And I want to know what happened to your priorities for the middle class and small businesses that you spoke about when you ran in 2010.
Answer the question, please.
Well, thank you, Joseph, and I will gladly answer that question. I've done many things in my 2 years at the legislature, including limiting permitting processes, streamlining the procedures in which businesses use to function every day. I have done my best to make sure that we spend money on those projects, just as I mentioned before, that will have the highest economic impact moving forward. Taxes are an issue. We worked hard to make sure that Minnesota lived within its budget and was more attractive to the business community.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman, you have to answer the question yourself, please.
Absolutely. We should have passed the 2011 bonding bill that Ben opposed to incentivize small businesses and grow their business and create jobs. We should have passed the bigger 2012 bonding bill that Ben opposed, leaving up to 10,000 good-paying infrastructure-related jobs on the bench. It just makes good business sense for the state to tackle the infrastructure challenges in a serious way and bring good jobs back here. It makes good business sense. The revenue to our state from the taxes paid by workers and businesses would be so beneficial, and no one can argue against fixing our roads and bridges, even our own state capital. Time to get serious about these repairs before we pass that tipping point. I call for using the over $450 million a year Minnesota subsidizes foreign operating corporations with. That money is now being primarily used to develop foreign jobs and foreign tax havens. And let's bring the money back home to Minnesota now and create the jobs.
Thank you. And Mr. Kruse, the question you'd like to ask of Mr. Hoffman.
Well, my question is very, very simple. Mr. Hoffman, what are you going to offer as legislation to create jobs here in Minnesota?
Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. First, it starts off with taking an honest look. For example, I serve on the Midway Chamber Board of Directors, and there are 14,000 jobs we'd like to create along the University Avenue, that 6-mile stretch. And working with the business collaboratives down there, one in particular, Chris Ferguson, who owns a small business right by the University of Minnesota, one of the things that they're needing to put in place is some business incentives for them to hire people and also to expand their business within that part. Imagine if we created those incentives for the local businesses here in Minnesota to exactly do what we've been doing overseas since 1970. That would be number one.
Okay. Mr. Kruse, your opportunity to answer your own question.
Well, thank you, Joseph. I guess I really didn't hear, I heard incentives, but I didn't hear what specific incentives. For me, job creation in the state of Minnesota comes down to 3 very specific things. The first thing we need to do is we need to continue to address our tax climate. We need to ease up off of both corporate and residential property taxes. We absolutely need to do something to create a more fair tax. I would like to see us move to something more like a flat tax supplemented by a consumption tax. That is the first step in bringing businesses back to Minnesota. The second thing we need to do is invest in infrastructure. Some of these bonding projects that I mentioned before, specifically Highway 610, I have talked to many small business owners that are ready to go along Highway 610 once that's completed all the way through to 94. Also, I have talked to folks at Target, and the 3,000 jobs, 4,000 jobs that they're going to be bringing here, that will be multiplied exponentially once we have that specific infrastructure completed. So that will be one of my main focuses. And then the third piece is workforce development. We have to do more to help to facilitate our business community and our higher education facilities. One of the things that I've done already, as I mentioned, is the creation of those biomedical science facilities. That came about because of a conversation that I had with businesses that are ready to come into Coon Rapids. So I have already started along that way to make sure we bring jobs back to Brooklyn Park, Champlin, and Coon Rapids.
Okay. Now we'll ask some questions from the audience. I have a lot, and I'm not sure that I can get through all of them in the next 12 minutes or so, but we'll start with. MnDOT is reporting that anticipated funding for highways will only cover the cost of maintaining the current system. Would you support increased user fees so that the projects such as completion of Trunk Highway 610 can happen before 2020? And I believe, Mr. Hoffman, you started the last round, Mr. Kruse.
Well, that's a good question, and I think we need to look at every available resource we have. I would much rather, if I had to make a choice between raising taxes and having a user fee, I would much rather go with that user fee, so that folks, if they chose not to, would not have to be financially burdened. We need to continue to be sensitive to our families' economic statuses right now. I know way too many people that are working 2, 3 jobs, including myself, to raise taxes on them right now. So if I had to choose, I would probably go down that user fee direction, and I would look to get back some of the money that we've lost in federal taxes. I would look to bring more of that back to the state of Minnesota and fund our projects that way as well.
Mr. Hoffman.
You know, when we talk about taxes, taxes are everything, including sales tax, property tax. User fees is a tax, and that is a tax. And let's be honest. I mean, when you're honest about something, you're there. I believe that user fees have to be looked at in the whole aspect of the tax structure, even when it comes to transportation, because you're going to have some property tax, building tax, small business tax. It's all going to be sorted in there. But let's take a collective look at this to see just exactly what we need to do with those user fees. So, in short, I would be okay with that only if we looked at it in the whole aspect of taxes itself.
Okay. I would not let rebuttals at this, so we can get more questions from the audience addressed, please. Do you believe the legislature should continue to take paychecks and per diem when the government is shut down? Mr. Hoffman.
No, I'm a small business owner. When I shut my doors, I don't get paid. And I just believe that it's unethical to take a paycheck when corporations shut down. I know businesses in Champlin that lost $100,000 because state parks were shut down, and there were businesses that provided T-shirts to vendors. So the answer is no.
Mr. Kruse.
Well, I think it's important to remember that we want a citizen legislature. And let me tell you my personal story about what happened during this past shutdown. I make right around $30,000 a year. I'm in no way a rich man. I live paycheck to paycheck. And when I give up my time working, I lose that income. And let me tell you, I spent many, many nights there at the Capitol trying to work with the governor and trying to get some of these things done. And I think for that effort that's put in, you are working, and you should be compensated for your work.
Okay. The next question, Mr. Kruse, you'll lead off. Please give us your thoughts on property taxes and homestead credits.
Well, as part of the budget negotiation in this past budget year, we agreed to eliminate that particular tax benefit. And that was an absolutely bitter thing for me personally to swallow. I think what I was looking at, I was trying to, again, have a big picture perspective. I was looking around me and I saw we had a government that was shut down, and I wanted to do everything that I could, and that was part of the negotiations that we gave up. That was part of the ways that we went in the governor's direction. And I think my record speaks clearly in the fact that I voted twice at the end of last session to reinstate that homestead tax credit. Twice. And that was vetoed twice by our current governor.
Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. Twice, and it was vetoed. Well, you also had in there, in the twice that you brought it in, would have been $1 million increase or $1 million less money being sent to our North School District. Homestead credit is an issue. 95% of the people in the state of Minnesota saw property taxes increase due to the fact that they changed how homestead credit. I believe one of the first things should happen is that goes back to how it was structured, and that's something I will work on from day one.
Okay, the next question, and it will be Mr. Hoffman leading. You both say in your materials and your websites that you own and operate businesses. Tell us, please, about the business you currently own and operate.
Thank you. Consumer Financial Management is an LLC, and it's an umbrella for Consumer Credit of Minnesota. Consumer Credit of Minnesota was chartered by me in partnership with Consumer Credit of America, and that in 2004. It's about a $500,000 a year business that benefits and helps people with that have financial problems fix it. I am a partner with my sister in that, and we operate in St. Louis Park.
Okay, Mr. Kruse.
Well, thank you, Joseph. Very simply, my background, like I mentioned, is small business, restaurants and real estate. I sell residential real estate for Coldwell Banker Burnett, and also have been in the restaurant industry for about 7 years. I ran restaurants for about 7 of those years with 2 different chains, and also currently right now, to supplement my income, as I mentioned, I'm about as blue collar as it gets. I serve tables. That's what I do. When I got my real estate license, I took a step back out of management because it was going to be beneficial for my family and time, and was looking for a different direction with some more flexibility. And so to do that, to make ends meet, I serve tables.
Okay. Mr. Hoffman.
It's a rebuttal on this, correct?
Yes, you can rebut on this.
Just one thing is, having a small business, my understanding is you have an inactive license, and I don't know how that works in the context. So when you're talking about being a business leader and a business owner, I'm having a hard time with that. Now, I'm not trying to say anything bad about that, but it just really confuses a lot of people when you say you understand small business, yet I work 3 jobs just to make ends meet on that, and one of them is being a business owner.
Mr. Kruse.
I think it's important to be honest. And you're misunderstanding. Currently, my license is on ice because of my work in the legislature and because of the expense of being a real estate agent, which costs probably around $8,000 a year. And my focus was on representing the people of this district. Months ago, I put my license temporarily on ice. I still am very much involved in real estate. I still want to go back to doing that, but I put it on ice temporarily while I am in the legislature so that I can focus on that work and not have to pay the fees associated with it while I'm focusing on my work at the legislature.
Next question, and Mr. Hoffman would answer this first. Do you agree with the legislative efforts last session to force our property taxes to go up? What do you plan to do about keeping property taxes from skyrocketing?
There are 2 things. Number one, I'm not happy with what happened to property taxes when they went up. The Homestead Credit Act is the first thing that needs to get reinstated. Secondly, when you look at our area, specifically in the Anoka-Hennepin School District, which is our 13 communities, including this one right here, we're a property-poor district. Being a property-poor district means that there isn't a good mix of business and residential. And so it takes twice as much money per pupil action to raise the same amount as somebody else in other parts of the metro area. Matter of fact, if we equalized our property taxes right here, which is a property tax savings to us in the Anoka-Hennepin School District, that would be $15 million more per year.
Well, I hate to say it again, but I think if there is such a thing as a silver bullet, it's job creation. If you truly want to see property taxes go down, which I do, there are certain things that we can do that are Band-Aid fixes at the legislature, and we will do those things. We will continue to do those things to try and bring that down. But the best way we can help lower our property taxes is to grow our businesses, bring more residents into the area so that we have a larger pool, a larger tax base, both income and property tax, because right now we have a lot of properties that are sitting vacant because we don't have people here because they can't work. They need to be able to pay those mortgages. They need to be able to put food on the table. If you want to lower property taxes, grow business in Minnesota.
Okay, and one more question, and then we'll ask for closing comments. How do you plan to help education spending, special ed, class sizes, and academic opportunities across the state? Mr. Kruse, you have this first.
Thank you, Joseph. That's a great question. Something that I think we did a great job of this past session. I think funding education needs to have a certain level of accountability to it, and we worked hard to do that. Perfect example of this is a literacy by third grade program that we introduced, which essentially says that this pool of dollars will be rewarded based on two things: children being able to read by third grade, or progress towards that goal over a 3-year rolling average. That has benefited our Anoka-Hennepin School District tremendously, brought in a lot of money for it, to the tune that now we are able to start doing some of our early education programs based on that additional funding. It helped to bridge the gap between the deficit that we saw in funding between Minneapolis and St. Paul and our school districts here, Anoka-Hennepin. I think also we need to continue to look at the school trust lands, which I did a great job of restructuring the management of those lands, taking an asset that was already available to us, again, thinking outside the box, and making it perform better to fund education rather than raising taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
It's been my passion. It's been my life's journey regarding education, specifically in the areas of special education. Class sizes, we know it takes about $1 million to reduce class size by 1 in the Hennepin School District. Let's make no bones about it. In the time of flat funding, and you look at it, our teachers for the last 3 years on top took pay freezes. We did, when we needed to close 8 school buildings, took a pay decrease, only to reinstate that. So it wasn't an increase. Special education costs are underfunded in this state. It starts back in 1974, 1973, when Public Law 94-142 was put in place. We need to hold the accountability side to that. The accountability side for your local school districts, 2.9% of all funds that come into our district go to administration costs. I own a small business where it's about 30%. That's pretty effective and fiscally vigilant management of our funding. Regarding the rest, 74% of the money that our constituents give us goes directly to the classroom. That's smart, effective, and efficient running. I can do the same thing regarding that when I get to the state Senate.
Thank you very much. We now are going to closing comments, and we'll have 1.5 minutes for each closing comment. We have about 3 minutes left. So, Mr. Kruse, you're first.
Well, again, Joseph, I'd like to thank you and Bob and the North Metro Mayors Association for this opportunity. I sincerely appreciate it. I think my record speaks for itself. I have been able to get things done, even in a difficult environment at the Capitol. I've represented this district well. I've gotten out in this past few months since I've been out of the legislature, and I've knocked on over 18,000 doors. That's because I truly care about the people I represent, and I want to hear your voice. I have learned so much from actually being door to door and shaking the hands of our residents. I've been able to bring new ideas to the table, and I'm going to continue to do that moving forward. I look in the future not only to stay on the committees that I'm on, but also to step up, now being not a freshman, having a little bit of experience behind my belt, into more of a leadership role at the Capitol. And I will bring my brand of compromise and getting things done to our leadership team. And I look forward to doing that over the next 4 years and continuing to represent Senate District 36.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you to the North Metro Mayors for handing this form, and thank you to the City of Brooklyn Park for letting us. This is a great place. Mm-hmm. This is a wonderful chamber we're at. You know, when we look at leadership, we look to say that those that never quit and those that never give up. And as a school board member, I never quit and I never gave up. We never picked our marbles up and went home. We stayed and we got the work done that was needed for this area. I'm a consensus builder. I will bring that same consensus building to St. Paul. We had to work to, as a group, with 6 people on the school board, we could never, ever walk away from an issue. We always had to work through that. Long times, long hours into the night working for that. I will work to end gridlock. And we need to create a real plan that creates real jobs. And when did it become acceptable to pass these short-term fixes that just don't work? And when did mediocrity really become good enough? I will challenge the establishment, as I've done on the school board. I need your vote so we can make Minnesota work again. Thank you.
And thank you both candidates, Ben and John, for being with us tonight, and thank you, citizens, for being here to hear the forum. We'll take a short pause for about 5 minutes, and we'll invite candidates, Mr. Uglum and Ms. Voltech, up to the dais here to join us to get ready for the next forum. Thank you very much.
Joseph, nice job. Good job.